First thing like this year you've been to? Hands, hands, hands. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I think it's probably fair and reasonable, since I'm going to ask you not only to vote for me on the 14th of September, but probably also to give up unreasonable amounts of time and surprisingly generous amounts of money to helping us get over the line, and to support the national team, Christine, the others around the country who are organising at events like this all over this continent right now. To tell you just a little bit about myself, because this is not where I thought I would end up. Actually, I used to really enjoy writing speeches for other politicians, because then you can just sit hammering away at a keyboard behind the scenes going, yeah, Robin should say this, and just blasting out polemic for other people to put their names to. And I'll tell you, it's a whole different thing when finally you get to jump up on stage and put your name to stuff as well. They didn't always read in the stuff that I wrote for them. But I actually started out as a graphic designer. My background is in the arts, and I'm still fairly obsessive about it. It drives my little team nuts. We've got great business cards, but occasionally late to, writing amendments to bills and stuff like that. And went from there, jumped the tracks at the end, at the time of the last change of government, before the one that just happened 6 years ago. 1996, when John Howard took over from Paul Keating, a while ago now, they took the brakes off the uranium industry in this country, and I went from being a fairly passive, politically, basically inert young person, 26, 27 years old at the time, to hearing a story about how a senior Aboriginal woman at the top end of the Northern Territory told a documentary film team, probably in about 2006, that the story of this particular hill on the edge of the Arnhem Escarpment is a story of warning. It's a story of don't disturb what is under that hill, whatever you do, because it would be extremely harmful for us, and it would be extremely harmful for people a long way from here if you mess around with what's under that hill. These people, needless to say, also custodians of stories stretching back, by no exaggeration, tens of thousands of years, didn't possess Geiger counters, didn't necessarily know all the ins and outs of radioactive decay and the 14 or 15 daughter isotopes of the parent uranium isotope under the hill. They just bloody knew that you shouldn't blow it up and ship it overseas. And when, in 1996, John Howard took the brakes off and said, the uranium industry is open for business, the front page of the Oz said there's going to be 25 uranium mines in this country, it kind of blew a fuse, because at about that time, Yvonne called for help. Yvonne Margarula, the senior custodian of that part of the world up north, called for help, did a national speaking tour. I threw my lot in with Jo Valentine, who I never failed a name check, and I'm sure I saw her here before. Jo, who has been an enormous inspiration to so many people for such a long period of time, and was in that building where we now inhabit with 10 MPs and 60 or 70 staff, a great big family of crew. Jo was there with a very small cohort of dedicated staff for the first time by herself. Thank you, Jo. And midway through 1998, after having thrown my lot in with these ratbags and these politicians, these Greens MPs, who actually would let you use and, quite frankly, abuse their photocopiers and the goodwill of their staff to get stuff done, teach you how to write parliamentary questions, what is a motion, what can we use these tools for, midway through the year took off to the Jabiluka blockade up north and was told by a mate just before I left, dude, you can't win. The mining companies, the Northern Territory government, the Commonwealth government, the global nuclear industry, and you've got what? You cannot win. They've already made their minds up. And I remember it as fresh as the day he told me. I was like, mate, we just have to have a go. And it's something that's just basically got under my skin. And guess what? They didn't mine it. They never did. And they never will. Jabiluka was not mine. And I can tell you it was a profound experience as a young person to be involved in a campaign led by an Aboriginal woman who called for help nationally and internationally and got it and prevailed. And it really does show that we can do absolutely anything. The transition from ratbag to working for Robin, my dear friend and mentor, is probably a conversation for over a beer, which, you know, we can have. But Robin very graciously took this broke graphic designer ratbag under his wing for 4 very good years, working up north. Actually taught me how to campaign and also what makes the state tick. About halfway through, I was like, I need to go to uni. He's over the road making laws, and he's got a great looking business card, and apart from that, I have no idea how to help him. Went back to university for a couple of years and spent a very, very good measure of time with Robin, who has just been re-elected again, 3rd time. And then had the extraordinarily good fortune of being taken on to work for Rach, who's just given you a bit of a background and a very warm and generous introduction. And while I was working for Rach, doing the commute between Perth and Canberra, and as Rachel has said, this is a period of time when Howard, after a fairly long period, I think he must have faced 3 elections by then, has finally got the prize and he's won balance of power, and our votes no longer really matter. Our voices matter a great deal, but our votes actually don't. We're sidelined. You write the amendments, you do the work, you put it up, you jump on a soapbox, you shout as loud as you can, but your votes don't matter at the end of the day. And in the middle of that, one day, Bob woke up, and I forget exactly what it was that caught your eye, and saw an opportunity around petrol sniffing. Grabbed it with both hands, got it onto the front page of the paper, something that nobody had been talking about. Absolutely devastating scourge, and Rach has given you a little bit of an insight into that as one of the proudest achievements. Petrol sniffing, suddenly Bob's grabbed it, I'm scratching my head going, okay, all right, good, it's got traction. Suddenly the nation's talking about petrol sniffing. 1.5 years later of extraordinarily hard work and grind by Rach, backed up by staff, including Fluff, a huge amount of work, persuaded Tony Abbott to fund the first rollout of Opal unsniffable fuel in Central Australia and save kids' lives. And I was hooked, I can tell you, because it didn't require the vote, it just required grinding hard work and the nous to spot an opportunity when it presented itself. So you can still do good campaigning, as our state colleagues have been doing in state parliament out of balance of power for a couple of years now. You can still win stuff, you can still perform a useful role. Right after that, or maybe I have this the other way around actually, because my first introduction to that place was a fortnight late in 2005, where we watched work choices, which we still haven't fully unpicked, the welfare to work reforms that started the slide of single parents into poverty, which has just been magnified by the Australian Labor Party, the anti-terrorism laws that brought the medieval charge of sedition back to the statute books, the introduction of a radioactive waste dump on an Aboriginal community in the Northern Territory, and then an attack on the student unions that they probably still haven't recovered from in a fortnight, and there was nothing that we could do about it. And I do not want us to go back there. We cannot afford to go back there. And that's what we're facing. Effectively, that's what we're looking at. A first-term Abbott government, without even the cautions that it took 8 years for Howard to throw away. A first-term Abbott government with absolute control over your national parliament, without the break, without the checks and balance, without the oversight, without, as they call it, the House of Second Thoughts. Parliament is a structure to contain a very old and very dangerous argument. When you think about it, when you put it simply, some of the alternatives to Parliament are bloody awful. It's what we have. It's kind of broken and a bit stuffed in parts, having seen it up close now. A lot of leadership does not come from there. It comes from out here. But it's what we have, and it's what we will use to build the tools of, I think, new forms of democracy. Because large parts of parliamentary democracy in this country have been captured by the very interests that seem incapable of turning the ship before we smash into the iceberg of climate change. That kind of mixes a metaphor, doesn't it? I should really think that one through. There will be no icebergs left to smash into, but this is how close we are. I don't know whether anybody saw Bill McKibben's presentations. He just did a swing through Australia. Extraordinarily valuable work. We are right up against it. This is no joke. As the environmentalists put on suits, got all respectable, cleaned up their language, stopped being so frightening, the climate scientists all sound like wild-eyed lunatics. Because every time you study what the climate system is quietly doing, the news is worse and worse. It is happening faster and more violently than these computer models ever predicted. We're not done yet. We did turn the ship. In the first speech after you got me elected in 2007, I said I wanted to be part of the process that turned the ship. I wanted to know when I stepped out that we had actually begun the transition in a meaningful way, not in a greenwashing kind of way, but in a change kind of way, that we had turned the ship. To know that we had done that was really my only ambition, to just be a part of it, to learn from the extraordinary teachers, people like Bob and Christine and Rach who've been there for years before me, and to do my bit to turn the ship. That's actually all I ask for. It's still principally all I ask for. And guess what? We actually did it. After 2010, when you got Rach elected, on just a shadow under a quota, our best ever result, got Adam Ban, our colleagues got Adam Ban elected to the seat of Melbourne for the first time, a House of Reps seat in a general election. One balance of... Adam, everybody, he's also from Fremantle. He's one of ours. We're kind of everywhere. It's fantastic. And won our best ever result in the Senate. And straight after that, probably without even resting for a day, Bob, Christine, Adam, Ben, a number of the other crew went straight into negotiations to hammer out what kind of agreement we could make with an incoming government, whoever might end up as the Prime Minister. And from that process came the Clean Energy Act that last year and this year saw greenhouse gas emissions in the electricity sector fall. Not that the growth tapered off a little bit, that the growth slowed, falling. Because, in the words of a financial analyst, renewables are eating coal alive. That is kind of what I meant by turning the ship. That is before the $10 billion of renewable energy investment for very large-scale projects like this kind of stuff, the very large-scale solar concentrated projects that Christine and I got to visit in the south of Spain last December, and it has kind of changed my life. My amazing staff, who I'm going to call up and ask to stand up in a second just to shame them because they're here, are getting sick of me talking about it, I presume, and sticking images of it all over the place. Can you imagine standing in a field of glass 1.5 kilometres across that when the sun comes up, for free, will generate enough electricity to power a city the size of Kalgoorlie? We stood there. Christine looked at me afterwards and said, so we've seen the future, and we like it. So much of the future that we see in the work that we do, collectively, as the Greens, as a broader movement that we represent, you see the future, and it's appalling. But we have seen the future, and actually in the south of Spain, it's the present. There's a plant 6 times the size under construction in Nevada at the moment. The company that is building that plant, Solar Reserve, are hinting that they might open up an office in Australia because of what you did, because of those policy settings, because we have turned the ship. There's a lot to defend, there's a lot to hold, and I will be stuffed if these lunatics are going to pull it apart before our eyes. We did suffer a reversal this year, and I've been reminded that we are a tough and resilient organisation, which is just as well, because we've had to be. We lost 2 good MPs and their staff, years' worth of work, Alison and Giz. Cameron, who should have been an MP today. And we have rebounded. We spent a period of time sulking, I know I certainly did. And now we have rebounded, and we are seeing extraordinary turnouts, including your company tonight, to turn the tide back and to reverse that tide that we've seen in poll after poll in state and territory election, where we have taken a bit of a kicking, where progressive voices have been drowned out, marginalised, shunted to the sidelines and off the front pages, unless we're being ridiculed. Guess what? We are not going away. We started here in this city, in this state, in the mid-1980s, not some activist paradise, In the rather bleak years of the late Cold War, where two nuclear-armed superpowers stood straddling the globe in some kind of strange suicide pact, and we had people in the parliament back then defying it and saying, we do not consent. This is not the kind of world that we want to build for ourselves. And now we are much greater in number. So we have had reversals, but we come back, and it's too important not to come back. And so our election plan for the next 94 days to win the 202,000 votes that we need, for the mathematically inclined, that is 1 in 7. 1 in 7 of every people that you meet between now and the 14th of September. If you can persuade them to vote Green, we win. Can we do that? So our campaign is about going very local and very personal. It's about stories. It's about what moves us and motivates us to do this work. On behalf of people who might have different views, might have different politics, might not yet even have been born. It is about developing that personal connection, and that is actually the foundation and the heart of our campaign. The second thing we're going to do, apart from going local, is go large. And we're going to try and fundraise and make sure that this campaign, we don't disappear out of the papers and off the TV screens and offline, so that our voice actually can't be denied, that we will not be marginalised and shunted aside this time. And so most of all, go with determination and do not be deterred, because we know that what we're doing is right. Yeah, go on. I really do want to thank the staff and the folk who've been with me in the office since the beginning, including the election campaign in 2007, and most of them, not all of them, are here. Can you just stand up and please show your appreciation to the crew who work with me in the Senate office and have been through some ups and downs? Where are they? Hiding.